So, do we have BTK here, please? Yes. Hello, yes. Well, regulatory aspects, WRC 19, and that's very topical because that's what's happening wherever it's happening in, is it Egypt or somewhere? So this is WRC meeting, and they meet, Geneva probably, and insights. So, Afşin?
Yes.
I'm going to try it.
Try, yes.
Büyük.
Büyükbaş. Yes.
Correct.
Nice. Good morning to everyone. I'm Afşin Büyükbaş from BTK, or Information and Communication Technologies Authority of Turkey. I'm the head of Spektrum Management Department. Well, in my presentation, I will talk about regulation and insights from WRC 19, as my department represents Turkey in this conference. Actually, regulation and the regulators are seen as restrictive powers which act as an obstacle to the industry. However, if you take regulation to your side, it will be a great advantage for you to make up a market and gain market share. Actually, regulation is crucial in ensuring harmonization of frequencies and standards, which in turn creates economies of scale and affordability of equipment and services by the end users. Well, this is actually a process cycle with positive feedback. Moreover, sometimes regulation and harmonization can substitute each other, where the ecosystem is already available, widely available. An example to this is the use of 3.6 to 3.8 gigahertz by the European countries for IMT. Although the band is not identified for IMT, Europe decided to use this band for IMT, and because they were sure that they can make up an ecosystem by themselves, even though there is no regulation at the moment. Talking about regulation, ITU WRC is the most prominent platform for the sharing of frequencies and spectrum satellite positions by the radio communication systems, where binding regulations are published by all the countries together to have an effect on the whole world. So this is very important for all parts of the industry, including satellites, of course, satellite industry. The agenda for WRC 19 contains over 30 agenda items. I believe it was 33. And these are all related to use of the frequency spectrum and the satellite orbits. In this presentation, I will try to bring out some insights regarding the discussions in the WRC 19, especially which will be of interest of the satellite industry. Well, main topics of this WRC include IMT 2020, which is called 5G by the commercial people, and high-altitude platforms, and terrestrial wireless applications, also including aeronautical and maritime communications, radio local area networks, RLANs, ITS and railway wireless systems, and satellite systems, and especially non-GSO satellite systems, and FSS and eSIMs, Earth Stations in Motion. You know, as like for other systems, we have different bands for satellite systems too. Lower frequencies such as L, S, and C bands are less affected by the heavy rainfall in parts of, for example, Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and can serve wide areas of the globe at a time. On the other hand, higher frequencies like Ku, Ka, Q, and V bands allow smaller antennas to be used with more focused service beams to regions or even sub-regional areas. While many of the 33 agenda items will be relevant for different players operating across the satellite spectrum, we consider the following as being of particular interest for the satellite industry, especially Earth stations in motion, and authorization of additional spectrum for IMT systems, and this spectrum is already being used by the satellite systems, and satellite coordination procedures and processes, and the regulation of unauthorized Earth stations. There are also other agenda items for allocation of frequency bands for other satellite systems. And also in this conference, as in other WRCs, there is a special agenda item for future WRC agenda items. The first agenda item to be considered might be 1.5. Well, this agenda item is about widening the bands that the eSIMs can use. And this agenda item includes 18 gigahertz and 28 gigahertz bands to be included to the spectrum of the eSIMs. The fact that this item remains on the WRC agenda reflects the advances in technology and the growing demand for an uptake of satellite-based connectivity systems to moving platforms on land and also in ships and aircrafts. Agenda item 1.5 is focusing on the need to develop the international regulatory framework as it relates to the use of spectrum for eSIMs so as to enable global satellite services, while at the same time protecting or not imposing undue restrictions to the systems already in this band. Which are, for example, FSS systems, FS systems, and mobile satellite services, or Earth exploration satellite services. The most important, let me say, because it has the greatest number of people attending the meetings of this agenda item. Agenda item is 113. The agenda item 113 considers additional new spectrum allocations to the terrestrial mobile services for the deployment of 5G, including the harmonization of frequency bands for future 5G services above 24 gigahertz. As some of the spectrum blocks which could be allocated to mobile services are currently used for satellite services, we think this agenda item is also of interest of the satellite industry. And it will be important for the regulators to find a balance between the two industries by the use of cooperation aspect. Under agenda item 113, the frequencies under discussions are on the slide. Some bands have already been determined to be not identified for IMT so far. So we have some good news for the satellite industry. And the next agenda item regarding the satellite systems is the one on the slide, agenda item 7. Firstly, actually there are so many issues under this agenda item, and these are all related to administrative issues, administrative processes which are applied by the ITU for satellite filings, applications, and the requirements of the satellite applications. One of the main issues which relates to the NGSO systems, such as mega constellations, we can call them, is in relation to the regulatory provisions to be introduced for the bringing into use of the NGSO systems. Such provisions include the need to specify a minimum period of operation and introducing an NGSO-specific milestone approach to monitor the deployment of NGSO systems. And another subject to be discussed under this agenda item 7, relates to the establishment of a simplified regulatory framework for NGSO systems with short duration missions. The outcome of this item may have implications, in particular for the operators of small satellites that are in orbit for 3 years or less. As you may well know, that small satellites are generally seen as examples of innovative space technology and encouraged at a national level, also from our administration. The other agenda items are 1.4 and 1.7 that can be considered as an important agenda items for the satellites. AI 1.4 and many of the issues under AI 7 have been approved. AI 4 is very important in terms of the review of Annex 7 of the Appendix 30 of the ITU-RR radio regulations. And another agenda item is 9.1, which includes some regulatory provisions for unauthorized Earth stations. Actually, there exists a regulation regarding the unauthorized Earth stations in the radio regulatory. However, this AI determines additional requirements to the notifying administration for a satellite network so that they shall endeavor to the extent practicable to limit the operation from transmitting Earth stations on the territory of which they are located and operated to only those licensed or authorized by that administration. We believe also this is important for our country too, and this AI is approved in the WRC at the moment. Of course, will be in force after the signing of the final act. Another approved agenda item is 919, and this agenda item allocates new spectrum to FSS services, also, of course, under several requirements, which you can see on the slide. Actually, we believe this is also important for the satellite industry to work with the mobile industry as a backhaul for the 5G networks. And finally, we have agenda item 10. This is an agenda item which exists in all WRCs, and it includes the provisional agendas for future WRCs, so we can get some clues for the WRCs, which bands will go to which industry, etc. And within this agenda item, we see that there are some future agenda items under discussion for additional allocation to Satcom, including inter-satellite links, eSIMs, FSS, and MSS IoT. MSS IoT is believed to be a very interesting area for the satellite industry. And also there are some agenda items in relation to the GSO and NGSO systems, protection of NGSOs from GSOs from NGSOs generally. And this was all for my presentation. Thank you, and I will be happy.
Thank you very much indeed, Afşin. There's lots of implications here, of course. What's going to change our industry, these narrow frequency band filters and all that sort of thing. And I'm sure people like Joe Duller up there is going to ask further questions about what's going on. So lots of interesting things and changes. Now, at this point, we're going to have a coffee break because we are running late for whatever reason. So enjoy the coffee, and I'd like to see you back here in 15 minutes, please. So that means that's 10:52.